it has been striking, I think, over these last 3 days, the way the president, again, I want to focus here on tone, not on substance, but tonally, how the president has kind of adopted a new tone. And I would say that it was not surprising to me today, after listening to him the last 2 days, to hear him just wrap his arms around the notion of the fact that he is a wartime president, or that he's trying to portray himself as a wartime president. It seems to me that that is now where he thinks is the way to win right now. Define this as a kind of martial conflict, and talk about how it's going to now be many, many months, and then hopefully figure out a way when this thing recedes to the extent that it does recede for him then to be able to claim victory over it. Now, there are a lot of inconvenient facts around that, but how do you accept the notion that that is sort of where Trump is now headed as a strategy, a political strategy?
Yeah, look, I think there's no question in the last few days you've seen him take this more seriously. He is treating it as the crisis that it is. Of course, at the same time, he's insisting he always did, which we all know is not the case. The record is very clear. But the tone of the last few days has been remarkably different. And I think it reflects a realization on his part that this can't be talked away. It can't be tweeted away. It can't be defined as a political hoax. It has to be dealt with in a direct, on point way, because the numbers don't lie. The numbers are grim. The numbers are very, very stark. People are getting sick and they're dying. I think that has gotten through to him, and he is trying to project leadership. And this idea of a martial approach, the idea that it's a war, that there's an enemy, fits into the way he, is most comfortable as a leader. He prefers having an enemy, an opponent, somebody to go after. Usually it's a human, of course, right? The Democrats, even Republicans, the Iranians, whoever it is, the media. He is at his strongest, most comfortable, most confident when he has somebody else to go after. This is, as he puts it, an invisible killer. It doesn't fit into his normal political paradigm. So defining it as a war, defining it himself as a wartime president is at least a more comfortable posture and a way of defining it for the public as well as something of great magnitude in which the society itself has to marshal all of his resources in order to defeat, if you will, this threat.
Chris, there's a tweet that caught my eye the other day from Greg Miller from the Washington Post, who's written very insightfully about Donald Trump at various times. He says, this from the Twitter here, he says, this I suspect is how AIDS turned him around on the seriousness of the pandemic, telling him that he could go down in history as a wartime president. And I think the key element there is not wartime president, but go down in history, where the assertion here by Miller that that what they were doing was kind of appealing to Trump's sense of hubris, that this is the only way to get him to accept how serious this problem was by kind of appealing to his vanity in some sense, and kind of asking him to imagine himself as Churchill, imagine himself as Roosevelt. It seems to me that makes a certain amount of sense, and I wonder whether we should look at that if it gets Donald Trump to take this more seriously, whether we should welcome that, or do we just think that he's really not taking it seriously at all, but this is just a kind of nakedly political strategy to try to find a way through when the other way was not obviously working?
Well, John, time will tell. I mean, I think, as you said to Peter, I mean, this is at first and foremost a political strategy on his part. He will portray this as the economy as the best ever before this, which it wasn't. And then he's now going to say this is the worst ever crisis, and that the worst case projections were that millions of people could have died. And if only thousands or tens of thousands of people have died, he should be declared a victor. And yet, everything that he has said over the last couple of days stands in stark contrast to the way he has talked about this and frankly dismissed it over the last 2 months. And if he really is a wartime president, then why don't you marshal all of the resources within the federal government to handle this? And as we pointed out, the Army Corps of Engineers, he's only now recently started engaging the Defense Production Act into all of this. And frankly, if you're going to be a wartime president, stop wearing your campaign merchandise when you're doing events. Stop attacking governors. Stop attacking the Chinese who have information as to how we can help solve this crisis, and truly act like a statesman. And so, look, this is his posture for the last 2 days. We'll see if it sticks.
So, Peter, you talked about how the enemy here is an enemy you can't see, the enemy that is the virus. But Trump is not just waging war here in his formulation, not just waging war against a virus. He's waging war against a Chinese virus. So let's just take a listen to how he talked about this today, where to a greater degree than he has in the past, he put that kind of front and center where this virus comes from in Donald Trump's view of the world.
I would like to begin by announcing some important developments in our war against the Chinese virus. It's not racist at all. No, not at all. It comes from China. That's why. It comes from China. I want to be accurate.
Senator Cotton is saying that they should be punished, in so many words, for inflicting this on the American people. Do you feel that way about it?
Well, I have a lot of respect for Tom Cotton, and I know exactly what he's been saying. And there are those people that say that. So we'll see what happens.
So, Peter, the president says, no, this is not racist at all, when, of course, it's nakedly racist and obviously racist and blatantly racist. I ask you, is this not the most predictable thing in the world, that for Donald Trump, it wouldn't be enough to go to war against a virus? All the better if the war could be waged against a virus that he can pin on a non-white population and pin on a population and a country that is one of our economic adversaries, that plays straight down the middle of his kind of xenophobic, populist foreign policy. This kind of seems like a golden opportunity for it to rip a page out of the Trump political playbook and just apply it to this pandemic by creating the Chinese virus.
Yeah, I think it goes to two aspects that we've seen over the last 3 years of the Trump presidency. One, of course, is that there are threats outside of our borders, and therefore we need to close them as much as we can, whether it be, drug dealers and rapists and criminals and gang members, and now, of course, disease. And defining as a foreign threat fits right into that worldview. The idea that America is surrounded by enemies and we need to wall ourselves off to some extent to protect ourselves. It also fits into his desire at this point to make clear to the American people that this is not his fault, right? That he is not to be blamed for this. This is, in fact, to be blamed on the Chinese, to be blamed on foreigners, that it's not about anything he did or didn't do. It's about, one of our overseas adversaries. And, again, that also fits in with the pattern we've seen over 3 years. That's not to say that the Chinese government couldn't have handled this better. They obviously have plenty of things that we could scrutinize and criticize. In fact, that's one reason why they're kicking out my colleagues and our compatriots in the Wall Street Journal and the Washington Post, because we have tried very hard to scrutinize how China handled this and to tell the truth about their approach. But that's not what the president's talking about here. What he's talking about here, I think, is a threat from the outside that we can all rally against as Americans, in his view.
Chris, I in a rather kind of precipitous way just said the president's declaration of this as a Chinese virus was racist. But I don't want my view to be the dominant view here, the reigning view here. What do you think? A virus that's being referred to around the White House apparently as the Kung flu. Speak to us here about whether you think there might be some racism in play in the White House on this matter.
Well, it won't be lost on you as an Asian American. In fact, as a Chinese American, this is a horribly offensive term. And, you simply go back to the way the president has talked about this. When talking to CNBC on January 22nd, he said, well, this is just one case coming in from China. We now know that this virus is coming from all different places. We could just as easily call it the Italian virus if we wanted to call it that. But here's the thing. If you just look on social media right now, you see Asian Americans posting the hateful comments that are being sent to them, the bullying that is done of Asian American kids, who people are being made to feel like they are somehow responsible for this. And today in the president's press conference, he was asked specifically, do you think this is hurtful and dangerous to Asian Americans in this country? And his exact quote is, I think they probably agree with me 100%. And I will simply say this as an Asian American, I 100% don't agree with the president on this.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.